Hello everyone, and welcome back to the studio. You're tuning in to episode 9 of module 4 of the Blueprint for Effortless English. I'm your co-host, Ben.
And I'm Anna. Welcome back, everyone. We're officially approaching the finish line of our real-world architecture module. You've built an absolutely incredible professional toolkit over the last 8 episodes.
You really have. We've completely upgraded your corporate vocabulary, we've given you the conversational armor to survive high-pressure executive meetings, and we've taught you how to negotiate, persuade, and give difficult feedback face-to-face.
In our last 2 episodes, we even taught you how to master the virtual office on video calls and how to decode the hidden diplomatic language of corporate emails. You're communicating with absolute executive presence.
But today, we're facing the ultimate boss battle of corporate communication. It's the single most terrifying scenario for almost every professional on Earth, regardless of whether English is their first or second language.
Today, we're diving into presentation secrets. We're talking about what happens when you have to stand up in front of an entire room of people, click to the first slide of your deck, and speak continuously, commanding the room for 20 minutes or more.
Before we teach you the exact native phrasing to captivate your audience and handle the terrifying question and answer session, we have our usual quick favor to ask. If you're serious about taking your career to the next level and you want to support this course, please hit that like button and subscribe to the English Chatcast channel.
Your support is what keeps this entire studio running. It helps the algorithm push these lessons out to other ambitious professionals who are trying to find their confident voice in the English language. Thank you so much for being part of our community.
So, let's talk about the sheer panic of public speaking, Anna. When an English learner finds out they have to give a presentation to the leadership team, they usually make one massive critical mistake before they even step into the room.
They absolutely do, because they are terrified of forgetting their English vocabulary under pressure. They write out their entire presentation word for word, like a massive essay, and then they try to memorize the entire script.
It's a total trap, because the second they stand up in front of the room and feel the adrenaline hit their system, their brain goes blank. They forget one single translated word from their script, and the entire presentation collapses. They freeze, they panic, and they resort to just turning around and reading directly off their PowerPoint slides.
And the moment you turn your back to the audience and start reading your slides, you've lost them. They pull out their phones, they stop listening, and your executive presence completely evaporates. You stop looking like a leader, and you start looking like a nervous student giving a book report.
To present like a native speaking executive, you have to throw away the script. You don't memorize words, you memorize landmarks. And you use highly specific corporate phrases to guide your audience from one landmark to the next.
Today, we're going to break professional presentations down into 4 crucial pillars. Pillar number 1 is the executive hook. Pillar number 2 is signposting and transitions. Pillar number 3 is the visual handoff. And pillar number 4 is surviving the unscripted question and answer session.
Let's start with pillar number 1, the executive hook. The first 30 seconds of your presentation are the most important. When you stand up to speak, your audience is not paying attention to you. They're thinking about their emails, their next meeting, or what they're going to eat for lunch.
You have to break their preoccupation immediately. But most non-native speakers start their presentations with the exact same boring, predictable academic opening. They stand up and say, "Hello, my name is Anna, and today I am going to talk to you about the 3rd quarter marketing budget."
It's so boring. It puts the audience right to sleep. Native executives don't start with an agenda. They start with a hook. A hook is a psychological tool designed to grab the audience's attention and force them to look at you.
One of the best native hooks is the hypothetical scenario. You force the audience to use their imagination before you show them a single data point. You walk to the center of the room and say, imagine a scenario where we could cut our production costs by 20% without sacrificing a single drop of quality.
Imagine a scenario where... That's a brilliant opening phrase. You're pacing them into a positive future, exactly like we taught you in our persuasion episode. Everyone in the room is going to look up from their phones because you just promised them a massive reward.
Another incredibly effective hook is the direct question. You engage the room physically by asking them to participate. You say, by a show of hands, how many of you have felt completely overwhelmed by our current reporting software?
By a show of hands. This is a classic native presentation technique. It forces the audience to physically raise their hands, which instantly wakes them up and makes them a part of your presentation.
You can also use the unexpected statistic hook. You don't say hello, you just look at the room, pause for a second of strategic silence, and say, 42%. That is the amount of market share we've lost to our competitors in the last 12 months alone. Good morning, my name is Anna, and today we're going to fix that.
That is such a powerful executive-level opening. You hit them with the problem first, establish the urgency, and then introduce yourself as the solution. It's incredibly confident.
Once you've hooked the room and introduced your core thesis, you have to guide them through your slide deck, which brings us to pillar number 2, signposting and transitions.
A presentation is a journey, and you are the tour guide. If you just jump randomly from one topic to another, your audience will get completely lost. You have to use signposts, which are verbal signals that tell the audience exactly where we are, where we've been, and where we're going next.
The biggest mistake people make is clicking to the next slide and saying, "Next slide, please," or "Moving to the next slide." It's clunky and unprofessional. You want your transitions to feel seamless and conversational.
Instead of saying, "Next slide," you use a conceptual transition. You summarize the point you just finished and introduce the point you're about to start. The absolute best phrase for this is, "That covers X, now let's pivot to Y."
That covers our initial budget constraints. Now, let's pivot to our proposed solutions. The verb pivot is incredibly professional. It implies a smooth, strategic turn rather than a harsh stop and start.
Another fantastic signposting phrase is, "This brings us to." You click the slide and say, "We've seen a massive drop in user engagement this quarter," which brings us to the core issue of our user interface design.
It builds a logical bridge between the problem and the topic. You're holding their hand and walking them across the bridge. If you're introducing a completely new, contrasting idea, you can use the phrase, "shifting gears for a moment."
Shifting gears is a perfect corporate idiom. It means we're changing directions completely. You say, "All right, shifting gears for a moment, let's look at how the international team is handling this same exact challenge."
You also need to signpost when you're getting close to the end of your presentation. You want to wake up anyone who might have drifted off. You use the phrase, "As we wrap things up today."
As we wrap things up today, I want to leave you with one final thought. The phrase "wrap things up" is the standard native idiom for finishing a meeting or a presentation. It signals to the audience that the end is near and they need to pay close attention to the final summary.
Now let's talk about exactly what you're doing while you're speaking. This brings us to pillar number 3, the visual handoff. Your PowerPoint deck is not your script. Your slides should be billboards, not teleprompters.
Exactly. A good slide has very little text, maybe just a graph, a powerful image, or a few critical data points. Your job is not to read the slide to them. Your job is to tell them why the slide is important. You have to linguistically direct their eyes to the right place.
We call this the visual handoff. You're handing their attention over to the screen for a brief moment and then pulling it back to yourself. The classic phrase for this is, "I'd like to draw your attention to."
I'd like to draw your attention to the upper right quadrant of this graph. That is so much more polished than pointing and saying, "Look right here." Drawing their attention sounds like an executive command.
You can also use the phrase, "as you can see from." As you can see from the sudden spike in April, our new marketing campaign yielded immediate results.
Notice how she didn't read the numbers on the graph? She just pointed out the spike and then gave them the analysis. Another great native phrase for analyzing a visual is, "What really stands out here is..."
What really stands out here is the massive discrepancy between our projected sales and our actual revenue. The phrasal verb stands out means it's the most important or obvious piece of information. You're doing the analytical work for them, so they don't have to guess what the graph means.
When you finish talking about the slide, you must pull their attention back to you. You literally step forward, look away from the screen, look directly at the audience, and say, "So, what is the key takeaway here?"
The key takeaway is the ultimate presentation phrase. The takeaway is the one single piece of information you want them to remember when they leave the room. So what's the key takeaway here? The takeaway is that we need to increase funding by 10% immediately.
You've delivered your hook, you've signposted beautifully, and you've managed the visuals like a pro. Your presentation is over. Everyone claps. But you aren't safe yet. Now you have to face the scariest part of the entire experience.
Pillar number 4, surviving the unscripted question and answer session. The Q&A is terrifying for English learners because you can't plan for it. You have no idea what they're going to ask, how fast they're going to speak, or what kind of complex vocabulary they might use.
You're completely exposed, and the instinct is to panic if you don't instantly understand the question or have the perfect answer ready. You have to learn how to actively manage the Q&A so you don't lose your authority at the very end.
The first rule of the Q&A is to never answer a question immediately. Even if you know the answer, take a 1-second pause. Then you validate the question to buy yourself time.
We taught you how to buy time in episode 2, and you use the exact same tools here. Someone asks a tough question, and you say, "That's a fantastic question, and I'm really glad you brought that up." That gives your brain 3 full seconds to translate your thoughts into English.
But what if you don't actually understand what they're asking? Maybe their accent is difficult, or they used a lot of confusing jargon. You cannot just guess what they meant. If you guess and answer the wrong question, you look incompetent.
Instead, you use the clarification loop. You respectfully ask them to narrow their focus. You say, "Just to make sure I'm answering the core of your question, are you asking specifically about the timeline or the budget itself?"
Just to make sure I'm answering the core of your question, that is brilliant corporate diplomacy. You aren't saying, "I don't understand you." You're saying, "Your question was so big and complex, I want to make sure I focus on the right part of it." It flatters them while saving you.
Another great clarification phrase is, "If I'm hearing you correctly, your main concern is the rollout phase, is that right?" You paraphrase their question back to them. If they say yes, you've bought yourself time and confirmed the topic.
But what if you understand the question perfectly and you just don't have the answer? What if the CEO asks you for a specific conversion rate from 2 years ago that you absolutely didn't memorize?
You never lie and you never babble. You use the confident deferral. You say, "I want to make sure I give you the most accurate data on that, so I'm going to have to pull those specific numbers and circle back with you after the meeting."
I want to make sure I give you the most accurate data. It completely protects your reputation. It shows that you value accuracy over guessing. And then you use our favorite professional idiom, circle back, to promise a future solution.
If a question is too specific and only applies to one person and it's boring the rest of the room, you have to take the conversation offline. Taking it offline means discussing it privately later so you don't waste the group's time.
Use the phrase, "That's a really specific use case. Let's take that offline and discuss it in detail after we wrap up here." It's polite, but it firmly shuts down the distraction and keeps you in control of the room.
Let's put these presentation pillars into action. Anna and I are going to do a quick role play to show you the massive difference between a nervous, scripted amateur and a polished, confident executive.
Let's pretend I'm giving a presentation on a new remote work policy. In the first version, I'm going to use the amateur approach. I'll use a boring opening, clumsy transitions, and I won't handle the visuals properly. Listen to how weak it sounds.
Here we go.
Hello, my name is Anna. Today, I am going to talk to you about the new remote work policy. Moving to the next slide. This slide has the data from an employee survey. Look at the graph. It says 70% of people want to work from home. Next slide, please.
And scene. That was painful to listen to. It was so robotic.
It felt awful to say. I didn't hook the audience at all. I used the terrible phrase, moving to the next slide, and I just read the exact data point off the graph instead of analyzing it for them. I sounded like a teleprompter.
Now let's rewind and do version 2. This time, Anna is going to use the exact executive phrases we just taught you. She'll use a hook, smooth signposting, and a professional visual handoff. Listen to the difference in her authority.
Take 2. Step into the presentation room. By a show of hands, how many of you feel like you get more deep, focused work done when you're sitting at your kitchen table than when you're sitting in your cubicle? I see a lot of hands going up. Good morning, everyone. I'm Anna, and today we're going to talk about modernizing our remote work policy. If I could draw your attention to the graph on the screen here, what really stands out is that 70% of our workforce is requesting a hybrid schedule. The key takeaway here isn't just about employee comfort, it's about maximizing our overall productivity. That covers the survey data, so shifting gears for a moment, let's pivot to how this will impact our real estate budget.
And scene. Complete night and day difference. She owned the room from the very first second.
It felt incredibly powerful. I started with a hook. By a show of hands, I forced the audience to interact with me immediately.
Then she handled the visual perfectly. She said, "If I could draw your attention to the graph," and she didn't just read the 70% number, she told them what it meant. She used the phrase, "The key takeaway here is maximizing productivity."
And my transition was flawless. I didn't say, "Next slide." I summarized the past and introduced the future. I said, "That covers the survey data, so shifting gears for a moment, let's pivot to the budget." It was completely conversational and highly professional.
That is how you deliver a presentation in English without letting your fear of the language destroy your executive presence. You lean on these structural landmarks, and you let the vocabulary do the heavy lifting for you.
When you master these phrases, you can step away from your script. You can look your audience in the eye, project total confidence, and actually start enjoying the experience of public speaking.
Which brings us to your mission for episode 9. It's time for you to draft your own executive opening.
Your homework for this week is the Presentation Hook Challenge. We want you to imagine you have to give a presentation to your team tomorrow morning about a project you are currently working on at your real job.
Your mission is to write the first 30 seconds of that presentation, but you cannot start with, "Hello, my name is." You must use one of the hooks we taught you today. Come down into the comments section of this episode and type out your exact executive hook. We want to see how you grab our attention and establish your authority right out of the gate. We'll be reading through and highlighting the most creative openings.
You guys have acquired an unbelievable amount of real-world architecture in this module. You can handle emails, phone calls, negotiations, meetings, and now the main stage presentation.
You have the complete professional toolkit, but knowing the tools and actually deploying them as a unified strategy are two different things.
That's right. In our next episode, we are wrapping up this entire module. Episode 10 is our grand finale for Module 4, Summary, the Professional Edge.
We're going to put everything together. We'll review the most critical phrases from all 9 episodes, and we'll show you how to weave them into a comprehensive professional persona that commands respect in any corporate environment. It's going to be a massive celebration of your progress.
But for today, focus on the stage. Throw away your script, memorize your landmarks, use your hooks, and always remember to pivot smoothly.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Anna. If you feel ready to command the room and crush your next presentation, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let's finish building this real-world architecture together. Until next time, keep practicing, keep listening, and remember, learning English with us is
a piece of cake. Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next time on the English Chatcast.